to Roll Credits, where movie lovers get the trivia they didn't know they needed. This podcast was created with help from AI tools, so double-check any quotes before you drop trivia at your next movie night. Today, we're stepping into this studio. Did you know many of the show's wildest moments are actually inspired by real Hollywood stories? And before we get into it, drop a comment and let us know what movie or show we should cover next, old or new.
Yeah, please do let us know. We love seeing those suggestions.
We really do. So for today's deep dive, I want you to just imagine something for a second. Imagine that you have dedicated your entire life to protecting animals, right?
Okay.
Like you've volunteered at shelters, you've marched for animal rights, you are, I don't know, a strict, uncompromising vegan.
Right.
And then one day, you are suddenly put in charge of a massive, struggling, highly commercial slaughterhouse.
Oh, man. That is a pivot.
Right. It's a total nightmare. The board of directors is screaming at you to, double the meat quotas by Q3. The shareholders want higher profit margins. But you, in your heart, still desperately want the world to see you as an animal lover.
Which is just, impossible.
And exactly. It's impossible. And that exact psychological torture chamber is basically the emotional engine behind Apple TV Plus's series, The Studio.
Yeah, that is spot on.
It was co-created by and stars Seth Rogen alongside Evan Goldberg, Alex Gregory, Peter Huck, and Frida Perez. And we aren't just looking at this show today as a comedy.
No, not at all.
We are dissecting it because it is this incredibly meticulously researched, deeply cynical, but also somehow very loving corporate satire of Hollywood itself.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, just prepare to have the magic of the movies completely demystified for you.
Oh, totally demystified. That slaughterhouse analogy you just made, it is perfectly apt because it captures the sheer, inescapable hypocrisy of the job. Because in the show, you have Seth Rogen playing Matt Remick, who is this newly appointed head of Continental Studios.
And Continental is...
It's this fictional, historic, Big Five legacy studio. But it is floundering. It is just bleeding money.
Right.
And Matt is tasked with saving this revered dream factory while he's navigating an industry that, honestly, it no longer cares about dreams. It cares about algorithms.
Yep. Streaming retention rates, right?
Exactly. Endless, recognizable IP reboots.
Yeah.
But to really understand the show, you have to understand where it actually came from in the real world.
The origin story.
Right, the origin story. Because early in their careers, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg were sitting in a note session with a real-life studio executive.
Okay.
And right in the middle of this meeting, the executive just breaks down, physically puts his head in his hands and says, I got into this because I love movies, but now I have this fear that my job is to ruin them.
Wow. Which is such a brutally honest admission.
It really is.
You almost feel bad for the guy. But here's where I struggle a bit and where I think you listening to this might struggle too.
Okay, what's that?
Isn't it really hard to feel sorry for a multimillionaire executive whose absolute biggest problem in life is that he has to greenlight a sequel to a toy commercial?
Oh, for sure. It's the world's smallest violin.
Right. So how do the creators actually balance that? How do they make fun of these incredibly privileged, out-of-touch executives while simultaneously asking us, the audience, to care about their existential dread?
Well, it's an incredibly difficult tonal tightrope. The reason it doesn't just devolve into this cynical eat-the-rich takedown is because Rogen injects his own actual flaws directly into the character of Matt.
His own flaws.
Yeah, his own anxieties, his hypocrisies. He isn't playing some mustache-twirling corporate villain, right? He's playing a heightened, desperately insecure version of himself.
Oh, okay.
He's a guy who knows he's a sellout, but his ego just cannot handle being perceived as a sellout. And the show illustrates this so brilliantly through his behavior.
Do you have an example from the sources?
Oh, absolutely. There's a scene where Matt needs to enforce these really severe budget cuts on a struggling, low-budget indie film.
Okay, tough conversation.
Right. And to deliver this bad news, he pulls up to the gritty, dusty indie set, driving a pristine, vintage 1953 Corvette.
See, that is exactly what I'm talking about. Why on earth would you drive a $200,000 vintage sports car to go tell a struggling artist they can't have, another $10,000 for a lighting rig?
It makes no sense.
It makes absolutely no sense logically.
Logically, no. But psychologically, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And the real kicker here is, Rogen admits he has actually done this in real life.
Wait, really? He actually did that?
He actually did that. It's an ego defense mechanism. Matt wants the indie director to think he's cool, that he's tasteful, that he's an artist who appreciates vintage aesthetics.
Instead of just the corporate Grim Reaper holding the purse strings.
Exactly. He wants to be loved by the very artists he is actively defunding. And by drawing on his own real-life hypocrisies like that, Rogen ensures the portrayal is this manic exploration of the fear of being unwanted.
Wow.
It's really about the terror of ruining the very thing you love most and the wild mental gymnastics you perform to convince yourself you're still the good guy.
Because Matt is just so terrified of being seen as a corporate suit. And, he actually builds a literal physical fortress of art around himself to hide the fact that he's essentially just a numbers guy now.
Oh, the studio lot, yes.
Yeah, you see that immediately in the architecture of the studio lot itself. The production design in this show isn't just background. It is practically a weapon used against the characters.
Absolutely. So they brought in Emmy-winning production designer Julie Berghoff.
She worked on The Handmaid's Tale, right?
Yes, she won for her work on The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
And she was tasked with building Continental Studios. She had to create a space that felt as lush and historic and imposing as like Paramount or Warner Bros.
Right, a real legacy vibe.
Exactly. And what she achieved is just an architectural masterclass in environmental storytelling. Because the building itself is constantly reminding Matt of how small he is.
I want to really break down how they pulled this off, because if you're watching the show, the illusion is so seamless, you'd think Continental was a real place you could go visit in LA.
It feels incredibly real.
So the exterior of the studio isn't CGI. They didn't just paint it in later. It's a massive physical facade that the production team built directly onto the steps of the actual Warner Bros. Television building in Burbank.
Which is wild.
It is wild. They nestled it among the existing trees, and they designed it to look like a 1927 Frank Lloyd Wright Mayan revival building.
Yeah, the characters literally refer to it in the show as a temple of cinema. Unironically.
A literal temple of cinema.
Yeah.
And the magic trick happens when Matt drives up in his little golf cart. He walks up those exterior stairs. He pushes through these heavy doors. And the camera cuts, but you, as the viewer, don't realize that the interior you're now looking at is actually the massive 9,000 square foot Soundstage 16.
It's a brilliant stitch. It really is. But what makes that 9,000 square foot set so compelling isn't just its size, it's the density of the history they built into it.
Tell me about that.
So Berghoff and her set decorator, Claire Kaufman, essentially created a museum of Matt's failures.
Ouch.
Yeah, when you look around the lobby, you see these tiny pockets of storytelling everywhere. Like, there's a hat that Elizabeth Taylor supposedly wore in a classic film just sitting there.
Oh, wow.
There's the studio's very last Oscar trophy sitting all alone in a glass display case.
Just mocking him.
Precisely. These aren't just cool props for the background. They function as mocking ghosts. Every single time Matt walks to his office, he has to physically pass the evidence of Continental's golden age.
Yeah.
An age he is at this very moment failing to live up to. The building is actively judging him.
And it goes all the way down to the lighting. I mean, there's this one detail from our deep dive prep that I am just obsessed with. It's called a cucoloris.
Oh, the cucoloris, yes.
If you're listening and you don't know what that is, in traditional filmmaking, a cucoloris is usually just this piece of wood or mesh with shapes cut out of it.
Like a stencil almost.
Exactly. You put it in front of a film light to cast a patterned shadow, like tree branches or window panes, onto a blank wall to make the scene look, more dynamic.
Break up the flat light.
Yeah. But for this show, Berghoff actually designed a massive architectural cucoloris right into the building's permanent mesh windows.
That is so smart.
So when the actual California sunlight hits the real building, it naturally projects a giant moving shadow of the letter C for Continental right across the lobby floor. It's a literal temporary film lighting technique baked into the prominent architecture of the building.
It's crazy. That level of granular detail, it really grounds the satire. It makes the world feel incredibly lived in. And, it extends to Matt's personal office, too.
Yeah.
Because Roger only had one major, uncompromisable demand for his character's workspace.
Which was?
A completely silent, totally authentic Italian espresso machine.
Okay, wait. Why specifically a silent one? Was he just being a diva about the noise while he was trying to act?
You'd think so, but no, it's actually a highly technical filmmaking constraint.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Film sets require absolute silence when the cameras are rolling, so the microphones can capture the actor's dialogue cleanly.
Right, obviously.
Usually, if a character is making coffee in a scene, the machine is either totally unplugged and they add the steam later with CGI, or the actor has to overdub their dialogue in post-production, because the real machine was just way too loud.
Ah, that makes sense.
But Rogen didn't want to do that. He wanted Matt to be able to nervously, frantically make real, high-quality espresso right in the middle of a scene while delivering dialogue.
Wow, so he actually wanted to make the coffee.
Yes. So the props department had to hunt down a machine that looked incredibly expensive, made genuine espresso, and operated at a decibel level low enough that the sound mixer wouldn't complain.
That sounds like a nightmare for the props team.
Well, I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
But it perfectly encapsulates Matt's character, right? He needs his artisanal comforts, and he refuses to compromise, no matter how difficult it makes things, for the crew working under him.
It's perfect. So, okay, we have the temple where they work. But I want to talk about where these executives retreat to when the workday is over. Because the show makes incredibly deliberate choices regarding their homes, too.
Yes, the houses are stunning.
Right. The production leaned heavily into real, historic, John Lautner, mid-century modern homes scattered across Los Angeles. Matt lives in the Foster Carling house, which is this incredible hexagonal glass-walled structure built back in 1949. And then former studio boss Patty Lee lives in the Harvey house, an architectural gem owned by the actress Kelly Lynch.
That's right.
And for their infamous continuous take episode, which we'll get into later, they shot at the Reiner Birchill residence, famously known in LA as Silvertop. Now, here is where I am completely lost, and maybe you can explain this.
I'll try.
I look at these gorgeous, sprawling, glass-walled homes, and they are basically fishbowls.
They are literal fishbowls.
You can see everything happening inside them from the outside. So if you are a paranoid Hollywood executive, terrified of being fired, terrified of your own shadow, why on earth would you choose to live in a literal glass box where you have nowhere to hide?
Because their egos are constantly at war with their paranoia. I mean, you are entirely correct that living in a glass house is a terrible idea for someone with anxiety.
Right.
But in Hollywood, mid-century modernism, especially John Lautner's work, is the ultimate status symbol. It communicates extreme wealth, immaculate taste, and architectural sophistication.
So it's all about flexing.
Exactly. They choose to live in these homes because their egos require them to be constantly on display to flex their success to their peers. It is an aesthetic choice that completely backfires on their mental health.
That makes so much sense. It's like buying a tuxedo made of sandpaper just because it looks good, but you're bleeding the whole time you wear it.
That's a great way to put it.
And visually, it must have been a gold mine for the camera.
Oh, it's a brilliant juxtaposition. You know, Lautner's architecture is characterized by its pristine, rigid geometry and its seamless integration of indoor and outdoor spaces through these massive, unbroken panes of glass.
Just flawless lines.
Right. And visually, this cold, unyielding perfection hilariously contrasts with the messy, frantic, sweaty panic of the characters having nervous breakdowns inside them. But practically speaking, shooting in these fishbowls was a logistical nightmare for the crew.
I can only imagine. Because if the house is a 360-degree glass circle, where do you put the boom mic operator?
Yep, can't.
Where do you hide the lighting stands? If the camera pans an inch too far, you're going to see 20 crew members eating snacks in the reflection of the glass.
Exactly. At Silvertop, specifically, because of the glass walls and the sloped terrain of the hillside it's built on, the crew had absolutely nowhere to hide their gear, their lights, or themselves.
Wow.
They couldn't even cheat the time of day by putting blackout tents over the windows, which is a common trick because the house was just too exposed.
So they were trapped by the location.
Completely trapped. The architecture forced the production team to operate with a level of terrifying precision.
Yeah.
Everyone had to hit their marks perfectly, ducking under windows and hiding in blind spots as the camera moved.
That sounds exhausting.
It was. The stress the crew felt making the show perfectly mirrored the high-wire act the characters are trying to pull off in their careers.
Okay, so we've built the temple and we've established the fishbowls. Let's look at the actual people trapped inside them. The ensemble of characters in the studio is fascinating because it's not just a random assortment of funny people.
No, it's very intentional.
Right. Each character represents a meticulously researched archetype of the Hollywood machine. It's a funhouse mirror of real industry power players. And I want to dig into the power dynamics here, starting with middle management.
Oh, middle management.
Because nothing is funnier and honestly sadder than a Hollywood executive who has a little bit of power but zero actual vision. That is Sal Saperstein, played by Ike Barinholtz.
Sal. Wow. Sal is the senior vice president of development, and he embodies pure middle management chaos.
Chaos is the word.
Yeah, Rogen and his co-creators actually met with real marketers, PR people, and producers to nail these composites down. And Sal is the guy everyone has met.
The guy who wants the top job.
He desperately wants the top job, but he keeps getting passed over. And how does he cope with the realization of his own mediocrity? He snorts a line of cocaine.
Yeah.
Sal represents a specific breed of executive who just chases trends, speaks entirely in buzzwords, and prioritizes style over substance because he fundamentally lacks any genuine artistic instinct.
He is the physical embodiment of risk aversion masked as innovation.
Yes, exactly.
There's this one moment where he earnestly pitches rebooting a colorful children's toy line as a gritty post-apocalyptic thriller.
Which is so funny.
If you're listening to this and you're wondering why on earth Hollywood keeps making dark, brooding reboots of your favorite childhood cartoons, Sal is the reason.
Sal is the reason.
He doesn't care about the toy. He just knows that gritty reboots trended well on Twitter 3 years ago, so he's trying to reverse engineer a hit.
Precisely. Sal loves the parties, he loves the prestige, and he loves the proximity to attractive, famous people much more than he actually loves the art of cinema. He's clinging to the lifestyle.
Right.
But if Sal is desperate, Maya Mason is terrifying.
Oh, Maya, played by Kathryn Hahn.
Yes. Maya is the head of marketing, and she is a ruthless theatrical force of nature. Maya's sole goal is making money. She has absolutely zero artistic ambitions, and she doesn't even pretend to.
Which honestly is almost refreshing compared to Matt's constant hypocrisy. But I have to push back here for a second.
Sure.
In an industry built on creative output, how does someone with zero artistic ambition not only survive, but actually thrive at the executive level? How does she get away with it?
Because, fundamentally, Continental is a slaughterhouse, remember?
Oh, back to the meat quotas.
Exactly. The board of directors doesn't care about art. They care about the quarterly earnings report. Maya survives because she delivers the meat. Her character is a brilliant amalgamation of legendary, larger-than-life Hollywood figures like Sue Mengers, Blair Rich, and Sue Kroll.
Total powerhouses.
These were women who commanded respect through sheer force of will. But what's fascinating about Maya is her methodology. In an era obsessed with algorithms and data analytics, Maya relies on gut feelings.
Oh, I love that detail.
Right. She will justify a $50 million marketing spend on a billboard campaign purely because she feels it in her bones. And Kathryn Hahn plays her with this manic, almost feral intensity. Maya knows that as long as the movie opens at #1 at the box office, literally no one will question her methods.
Hahn truly looks like she is having the time of her life, just tearing into the scenery. And then right below her, waiting to strike, is Quinn Hackett, played by Chase Suey Wonders.
Yeah.
Quinn is the Machiavellian, wildly ambitious development executive. She's essentially a Nepo baby, someone who got her foot in the door through family connections, and she represents the new generational guard coming in.
And she is cold.
So cold. She worships Matt to his face, but you get the distinct sense she would gladly step over his dead body to get his parking space.
Oh, yeah. Without a second thought.
She's inspired by real-world figures like Hannah Minghella and Courtney Valenti. And the generational clash between Quinn's cold calculation and Matt's neurotic flailing is so sharp. But hovering above all of them, pulling the strings, is Griffin Mill, played by the legendary Bryan Cranston.
Griffin Mill. He is the corporate CEO. He is an octogenarian who looked at a company like Matt's and just sees a line item on a spreadsheet.
Just numbers.
Just numbers. In the show, he demands that Matt build a billion-dollar interconnected cinematic universe based entirely around the Kool-Aid Man.
The Kool-Aid Man.
Yes. Just because he saw how much money the Barbie movie made and he wants to blindly replicate it. He doesn't understand why a beverage mascot might not have the same narrative depth as Barbie. He just sees a recognizable brand and says, do that.
I cannot get over Cranston's wardrobe in this show. It is incredible. He is dressed in full 1970s attire. We're talking turtlenecks, velvet blazers, and this incredibly gaudy shark's tooth necklace.
Oh, the necklace.
I read that Cranston actually insisted on wearing the necklace because he felt it was the perfect symbol of a wealthy, aging man desperately trying to project virility and dominance.
That is such an actor choice.
It's brilliant. Also, the name Griffin Mill is no accident, right? That's a massive Easter egg for film nerds.
It is a direct homage. Griffin Mill was the name of Tim Robbins' murderous studio executive character in Robert Altman's masterpiece, 1992 Hollywood satire, The Player.
Wow, okay.
By naming the CEO Griffin Mill, the creators are directly tying their show to the lineage of great Hollywood satires. But his actual persona in the show is a sharp parody of contemporary, hyper-corporate executives like Warner Bros., Discovery's David Zaslav, Sony's Michael Linton, and a dash of the legendary Paramount chief Bob Evans.
quite the mix.
He's the out-of-touch god sitting on Mount Olympus, basically just throwing lightning bolts down at Matt just to watch him scramble.
And scrambling right alongside Matt is Patty Lee, played by Catherine O'Hara. Patty is Matt's mentor. She's the unpredictable, deeply passionate former studio boss who was ousted.
She represents the old guard.
Right. The intuitive, artist-friendly leaders inspired by real executives like Amy Pascal and Jen Salk. But we really need to acknowledge the sobering, real-world shadow hanging over this character, because Catherine O'Hara tragically passed away in January 2026.
Yeah.
And this happened just one day into filming the show's second season.
It is a profound loss for the comedy world and obviously a massive blow to the production. The creators had to completely halt filming.
I can't even imagine.
She was slated to be the central emotional pillar of the new season. Her performance in Season 1 brings such a necessary chaotic warmth to the cold, corporate environment of Continental Studios. It's a really stark reminder of the real human lives behind the industry they are satirizing.
It really is. It puts everything into perspective. So when you look at this entire group, Matt, Sal, Maya, Quinn, Griffin, Patty Hifos, I compare this cast to a deeply dysfunctional royal court.
Oh, absolutely.
Everyone is secretly plotting to overthrow the king, while simultaneously begging the king for validation and a bigger allowance. But how does this ensemble dynamic elevate the show? Because on paper, it just sounds like a standard mean-spirited workplace comedy. Why does it feel like a profound commentary on how movies actually get made?
It all comes down to a word the show's cinematographer used to describe the atmosphere on set. Codependence.
Codependence?
Yes. The studio succeeds wildly because it doesn't just mock these executives, it shows you the structural forces that make them act this way.
Right, the system itself.
When they gang up in a room and force an indie director to add random explosions and a cute dog to a quiet, depressing drama, it's not because they are inherently evil people who hate art. It's rooted in corporate survival.
Because they're scared.
The ensemble dynamic illustrates that every terrible, soul-crushing creative decision in Hollywood is a collaborative effort born of panic. They're all terrified of getting fired, so they form a firing squad circle, and the actors lean into this brilliantly. Cranston, Hahn, Rogen, they are masters of massive ensemble acting. They pass the comedic ball back and forth, building on each other's desperate energy until a terrible idea actually sounds like genius to them.
Which brings us perfectly to the people these executives are so desperate to control, yet so utterly terrified of: the talent.
Yes.
The talent. We're moving from the fictionalized executives to the real-life stars they have to wrangle. And this is arguably the most viral, most talked-about element of the show, the parade of massive A-list celebrities showing up to play absolutely awful, exaggerated versions of themselves.
It is a brilliant meta layer.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is the specific deliberate rule that Rogen and Goldberg established early on for casting these cameos. They actively avoided casting actors closely associated with Rogen's real-world career. Yeah, you don't see Jonah Hill, you don't see Michael Cera or James Franco or anyone from the Superbad or Pineapple Express crew.
I actually wondered about that when I was watching. I kept expecting, Craig Robinson to walk through a door.
Nope.
But when you think about it, the rule makes perfect sense. If you put Seth Rogen and Jonah Hill in a room together on screen, the audience immediately stops seeing Matt Remick, the studio head. The suspension of disbelief breaks, and you just see Seth and Jonah hanging out, doing their usual shtick.
Exactly. They wanted to prevent blurring the lines between Seth's real life and Matt's fictional reality. So instead, they instituted the one good, clear joke rule.
How'd that work?
They approached massive, prestigious stars outside of their normal comedy circle. Rogen admitted that about 20% of these stars initially hesitated, but Rogen and Goldberg promised them one strong, distinct comedic beat. And surprisingly, almost all of them leaned in and made themselves look like massive, egotistical jerks on purpose.
The results are spectacular, particularly with the older generation of auteurs. Take Martin Scorsese in the pilot episode.
Oh, Scorsese, yes.
He appears in Matt's office earnestly pitching a $250 million R-rated 3-hour pet project about the Jonestown Massacre.
Which is just terrifying on paper.
Right. Now, Matt is terrified. He knows a $250 million movie about mass suicide is going to bankrupt the studio, but he is too cowardly to tell a living legend no. And when Matt inadvertently causes the project to be canceled, Scorsese just unloads on him. He drops a string of expletives, screams at him, and storms out. It's a hilarious subversion of the revered grandfatherly auteur trope we usually associate with Scorsese.
But wait, let's dissect the psychology of that Scorsese scene for a second. If you're listening to this and wondering why on earth a studio head would even entertain a meeting about a $250 million Jonestown movie, that is exactly the blind spot the satire is targeting.
Explain that.
You, as the audience, see the obvious absurdity and the financial ruin. But Matt Remick only sees a chance to hang out with Martin Scorsese. He is blinded by the prestige. He wants to be the guy who greenlights the master even if it destroys his company. The power dynamic is totally inverted. The talent holds the studio hostage.
Exactly. And you see that inversion again with Charlize Theron.
Oh, her scene is fantastic.
She is famous in real-life Hollywood for throwing incredible, exclusive parties. In the show, Matt finally scores an invite to her bash, which is his ultimate dream of social acceptance. But almost immediately upon arriving, Theron perfectly delivers a single, devastatingly cold line, personally kicking Matt and Sal out of her house.
Yes, brutal.
It is the ultimate executive indignity. They have the power to greenlight her movies, but she has the power to exclude them from high society. And then you have Ron Howard, who has built an entire career on his friendly, wholesome, approachable, Opie persona.
Right. Everyone loves Ron Howard.
In the show, he completely abandons it to brutally, sadistically berate Matt over a minor studio note on a script.
It is so jarring to see Ron Howard scream at someone. The cameos also do a fantastic job of targeting highly specific filmmaking tropes. There is a scene with Zac Efron that is painfully funny.
Oh, the hat scene.
He struggles through 40 agonizing takes just trying to put a hat on his head. He puts it on, takes it off, looks at the mirror's eyes, and does it again. Over and over. It's a brilliant mockery of the meticulous, exhausting nature of auteur directors.
If you think about David Fincher demanding 90 takes of an actor just picking up a pencil, this is the absurd extreme of that.
Exactly. But again, why does Matt let Efron do 40 takes?
Yeah.
Because Efron is the star, and Matt is terrified that if he interrupts, Efron will walk off the set and the movie dies.
The executives are hostages to the talent's process. You see this vividly with Sarah Polley, too. She plays an angry, frustrated director trying to shoot a highly complicated, continuous tracking shot.
Oh, that runner scene.
When Matt shows up on set, ostensibly to support her, he just gets in the way of the camera, ruins the take, and tries to offer unhelpful advice. She finally snaps and screams at him to support me from anywhere on earth other than here.
It's the universal cry of every artist who has ever had a middle manager hovering over their shoulder.
And the list goes on. You have Paul Dano starring in an ultra-violent, gritty Western, which goes completely against his usual quiet intellectual typecasting. You have Greta Lee complaining she only made $2 from starring in the indie hit Past Lives.
So specific.
You have Anthony Mackie, Anthony Starr, and there is a really sharp, uncomfortable meta debate where the executives argue about whether casting Ice Cube as the voice of the Kool-Aid Man reinforces negative racial stereotypes, or if it's just a payday. It's like watching an alternate universe documentary where you're seeing the evil twin version of all your favorite celebrities.
Yeah, the dark time.
But what does it actually say about Hollywood today that so many A-listers were just so eager to tear down their own carefully crafted public personas? Is it just for a laugh, or is there something deeper going on?
I think it speaks to an immense need for psychological catharsis. By playing these exaggerated, ego-driven, monstrous versions of themselves, these actors get to publicly mock the very industry tropes and pressures they are subjected to on a daily basis.
So it's therapeutic.
Yeah. When Zac Efron mocks an actor doing 40 takes, he is releasing the tension of every time he's had to endure an obsessive director. It's therapeutic to be the villain in a safe, comedic environment.
That makes total sense.
However, leaning so heavily on these cameos raises a major structural problem for the longevity of the show. Rogen has admitted that Season 2 is facing massive logistical hurdles.
Because of the one good joke rule.
Exactly. Because they established that rule, their scripts now require highly specific cameos. For instance, they have a brilliant episode plan that relies entirely on a director of James Cameron's specific stature and reputation.
Oh boy.
If James Cameron or someone exactly like him says no, they can't just plug in a lesser-known director. The joke fails, and the entire episode script literally has to be thrown in the trash. It's a highly precarious, dangerous way to build a television narrative.
It's like doing a stand-up comedy routine while walking a tightrope without a net. If one element falls, the whole show dies, which is actually the perfect transition because that tightrope analogy is exactly how they filmed the show, too.
Yes, the filming style.
The anxiety of wrangling these massive egos, the fear of the script failing it, isn't just felt in the dialogue, it is physically baked into the very cinematography of the series. We have to talk about how incredibly stressful it was to capture the show visually because almost every scene is an owner.
Right. For those unfamiliar with the filmmaking terminology, owner spelled O-N-E-R is a single, unbroken, continuous take with no visible cuts.
The holy grail of cinematography.
The camera starts rolling, follows the actors through a scene, and doesn't stop until the scene is over. Across the entire 10-episode first season, these owners amount to roughly 4.5 hours of continuous, uncut footage.
That is insane.
It's a staggering technical and artistic commitment. Very few television comedies have ever attempted something this relentless.
So if you're the showrunner, why do it? Why make your life exponentially harder? Well, Rogen and Goldberg decided that they wanted the camera to physically reflect the inescapable panic and manic energy of being a Hollywood executive. As they put it in an interview, if you never cut, you never get a break.
It's so true.
As a viewer, you are off kilter at all times. You can't relax because the camera never blinks. But the technical marvel required to achieve this is just insane. Cinematographer Adam Newport-Berra used an Alexa 35 camera with a 21mm wide lens for the entire show.
That specific camera and lens combination is crucial to the look and feel. A 21mm lens is quite wide, which means it captures a massive field of view.
Right.
It keeps the actors in focus. But it also captures all that beautiful, intimidating architecture we talked about earlier. However, the physical reality of using this rig is punishing. The camera setup weighed 40 pounds.
40 pounds?
40 pounds. Now, I want you to imagine the physical mechanics of a shot that requires the camera to start high up on a 40-foot crane swinging down to the ground. As it reaches the ground, the camera must be seamlessly unclipped from the crane and carried by a handheld operator.
Without cutting.
Without cutting. In this case, it was an incredibly strong Greek named Mark Gultnicht. Gultnicht has to take the weight of this 40-pound rig mid-shot, walk backward through a building, navigate up a set of stairs, and back into an office, all while keeping the actors perfectly framed.
That is an athletic feat.
It is. When you lift a 40-pound camera off a crane mid-shot, the counterbalance shifts violently. If the operator stumbles for even a fraction of a second, the shot shakes, the illusion is broken, and you have to start the 8-minute scene all over again. The physical toll and the terrifying precision required from the grip and camera teams were immense.
And think about what that means for the actors. Let's go back to the tightrope analogy. If you have 5 actors in an 8-minute scene and someone flubs a punchline or trips over a chair at minute 7, the whole ensemble falls. They have to start over from minute 0.
It's devastating when that happens.
Right. In traditional television comedy, you shoot coverage, you shoot the wide shot, and then you shoot close-ups of every actor. So if an actor messes up a line, the editor just cuts to a reaction shot of another actor, cuts out the mistake, and patches the audio together. It's a safety net.
Yeah, it's standard practice.
The studio removed the safety net entirely, so I have to ask, how did this massive restriction actually force the cast to be funnier? Because it sounds like it would just paralyze them with fear.
Well, it forced a profound level of codependence on set. Without the safety net of an editing bay to artificially tighten the comedic timing later, the actors had to perfectly choreograph their dialogue, their breathing, and their physical movements in tandem with the camera operator. It became a dance.
Wow.
And remarkably, the editing happened live on set.
How does that work?
The editor, Eric Kissack, didn't sit in a dark room months later. He sat at the Video Village monitors during filming and gave real-time notes to the director. Because they couldn't cut, Kissack would have to instruct the camera operator on pacing.
Oh, I see.
He would say, when Seth delivers the punchline, hold the camera on his face for exactly a split second longer before panning to Catherine Hahn so the joke has space to land in the viewer's brain. They were literally editing the comedic pacing of the scene with their physical bodies in real time.
That is wild. It's like performing live theater, but with a 40-pound robot staring at you. And let's not forget the invisible visual effects magic provided by Wiley Co. Because they never cut, they had to rely on immensely powerful computers, specifically AMD Ryzen Threadripper PRO processors, to handle massive uncompressed 6K video files.
The data management alone must have been staggering.
Oh, yeah. They had to stitch together hidden transitions when the camera passed behind a pillar or digitally paint out the crew's reflections in those glass Lautner houses. But their absolute crowning achievement was an 8-minute unbroken shot circling a massive conference table.
The boardroom scene.
Right, it's a classic boardroom scene.
Hmm.
But mathematically, they couldn't figure out how to shoot across the table and then get the camera into the center of the table to capture the actors' faces without yelling cut and physically moving the table.
So what do?
They built a physical donut-shaped edge of a table with trapdoors in the middle of it. As the camera circled the actors, the camera operator literally stepped inside the center of the table mid-scene. The trapdoors closed silently behind him, allowing him to stand in the middle. Later, the visual effects team used those Threadripper processors to digitally fill in the massive gaping hole in the center of the table, adding CGI coffee mugs, notepads, and pencils so it looked like one solid, completely real piece of wood.
The ingenuity is remarkable. It's problem-solving at the highest level. And it's worth noting how they contrasted the stark visual look of the real studio world with the fake movies within a movie that Continental is producing.
Right, like the Paul Dano movie.
Yeah, for the fake movies like the Paul Dano action scene or Johnny Knoxville's absurd zombie diarrhea movie called Depocalypse,
Yeah.
the cinematographers switched the camera setup from spherical lenses to anamorphic lenses.
Okay, let's pause and explain that, because if you're not a camera nerd, that just sounds like technical jargon. What is the actual difference?
It's a great question. A spherical lens captures reality pretty accurately. It projects an image onto the camera sensor exactly as the human eye sees it. That's what they use for the harsh, documentary-style reality of the executives running around the studio.
Right, the everyday panic.
But an anamorphic lens physically squeezes a super wide image onto the sensor. When you unsqueeze that image in post-production, it naturally warps the edges of the frame. More importantly, the internal glass elements of an anamorphic lens stretch out light sources into those big, dramatic, horizontal lens flares. Think of the visual style of a J.J. Abrams movie.
Oh, those iconic blue streaks of light.
Exactly. It physically distorts the light to make the image look grander, more cinematic, and more Hollywood. By simply changing the glass on the front of the camera, they created a clear, subconscious visual distinction between Matt Remick's terrifying, sharp reality and the polished, flare-filled fantasy of the blockbuster films he produces.
It is such a smart, subtle trick. Okay, let's talk about the ultimate collision of Matt's harsh reality and Hollywood fantasy. I want to tell you a story about Martin Scorsese visiting the set for his cameo.
Okay.
Rogen was absolutely terrified that Scorsese, who is arguably our greatest living titan of cinema, would look at this single camera, no coverage setup and hate it. He thought Scorsese would think it was amateurish.
I can understand that fear.
So what did Rogen do? He secretly hired the exact camera crew that shot Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon to be on standby as a backup in the next room, just in case Scorsese walked on set and demanded they shoot traditional coverage.
You're kidding.
Nope. But instead, Scorsese shows up, looks at the under setup, watches the camera operator do the dance, and says, "It's like the French New Wave, I get it. That's cool."
That is a wonderful anecdote. It shows the deep respect Rogen has for the medium and its masters. He was willing to double his budget just to make Scorsese comfortable. But as we move to the culmination of the first season, we see how this hyper-realistic, lovingly crafted satire eventually collided with the actual real world, resulting in real-life drama, hurt feelings, and massive awards success. Let's examine episode 8, titled Golden Globes.
This episode is the absolute peak of the show's cringe comedy. It is agonizing to watch. Matt Remick spends the entire episode desperately, pathetically begging actress Zoe Kravitz to explicitly thank him by name in her Golden Globes acceptance speech.
It's so uncomfortable.
Yeah, Matt greenlit her movie. He fought for it, so he feels entirely entitled to the public praise. He degrades himself. He begs her publicist. He hovers around her table. And meanwhile, his rival, Sal, is getting thanked in every single speech as part of a running comedy bit started by actor Adam Scott.
Which is driving Matt insane.
Driving him insane. Finally, Zoe wins her award. She walks up to the podium, she gives this beautiful speech, and right at the very end, she actually says Matt's name.
Wait.
No, I mean, right at the end, she says Matt's name and the microphone cuts out. A technical glitch. Nobody in the room or on television hears it.
It is a devastating, hilarious, and ultimately hollow punchline for a hollow man. But the logistics of achieving this episode are staggering. They didn't build a set for this. They filmed it in the actual Beverly Hilton Hotel and Ballroom where the real Golden Globes take place.
That must have been so expensive.
It was. Rogen used his decades of personal experience attending these high-stress industry ceremonies to perfectly replicate the layout, the exact placement of the bars, the lighting, even the specific mediocre catering food served to the guests.
The rubber chicken.
Yeah, exactly. And they populated the room with heavy hitters to make it feel authentic. Ted Sarandos, the real-world co-CEO of Netflix, makes a cameo sitting at a table. You see Aaron Sorkin, Quinta Brunson, and Gene Smart. The Golden Globes organization actually allowed the production to film there, though they drew the line at using the real trophies, so the box department had to design their own look-alike statues.
But here's where reality bites back hard and why this show is so dangerous to make. That pathetic storyline. Matt degrading himself for a thank you. It wasn't just a funny idea they invented in a writer's room. It was entirely inspired by a real-life studio executive.
Oh, this is the best part.
During their research phase, Rogen and the creators met with an executive who candidly admitted that after a major star failed to thank her during an award speech for a movie she championed, she got into her limo and cried for the entire ride home.
Just cried all the way home.
Cried all the way home. Rogen heard that confession and thought, that is the saddest, funniest thing I've ever heard. I am putting that in the show. And he did. He mapped that exact insecurity onto Matt Remick.
And the real-world consequence of that creative choice is fascinating. Rogen admitted in an interview that this real-life executive watched the episode, recognized themselves in Matt Remick's desperate behavior, confronted Rogen, and was absolutely furious about being the inspiration for the joke.
I mean, I would be too.
Yeah. It highlights the profound danger of holding a mirror up to an industry built almost entirely on fragile egos. You can satirize the system, but when you satirize the specific insecurities of the people who run the system, they get angry. But the ultimate irony of the series is its reception. Despite angering some of the very people it was mocking, the studio broke Apple TV Plus viewership records, earning an astonishing 23 Emmy nominations for its first season. This included nods for Outstanding Comedy, Lead Actor for Rogen, Directing, and a complete unprecedented sweep of the Guest Actor category for Scorsese, Howard, Cranston, Mackie, and Dave Franco.
Which brings me to a major thought experiment for you listening at home and for you here with me today. Let's really interrogate this meta-irony. If this entire show is a razor-sharp, cynical critique of Hollywood's vanity, its desperation for validation, and its absurd, hollow obsession with shiny awards, isn't Seth Rogen happily accepting 23 Emmy nominations the ultimate punchline? I mean, did they just become the very thing they were satirizing? Is it hypocritical to mock the Golden Globes while campaigning for an Emmy?
It is the pinnacle of irony, yes. But I don't think it's hypocritical. I think it actually synthesizes the core message of the show beautifully. The show proves its own point. Hollywood loves nothing more than looking at itself in the mirror, even if the reflection staring back is hideous. The industry loves a show about the industry.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it goes deeper than mere vanity. Rogen was actually asked by a journalist if he somehow gamed the Emmy system to get 23 nominations. And he laughed and said, if there was a formula to simply buy or hack these awards, I would have used it 25 years ago.
Fair point.
The truth is, the show succeeds and resonates so deeply with the industry it mocks because it operates from a place of deep, agonizing love. It was created by people who genuinely, profoundly adore cinema. They are examining an industry that is fundamentally, hilariously absurd, but they aren't trying to burn it down. They are trying to understand why they are still addicted to it.
It is a love letter written in acid. It burns, but it's sincere. And honestly, it really makes you rethink everything you watch. Think about the last massive blockbuster movie you watched, the one with the huge explosions, the A-list stars, the flawless visual effects. After hearing all of this, ask yourself, how many compromises, screaming matches, bruised egos, and executives crying in limousines happened just to get that 2-hour story onto your screen?
A lot of them.
How many 40-pound cameras were carried backward down a flight of stairs? Does knowing the chaotic, deeply insecure reality of the executives making these decisions ruin the magic of the movies for you? Or does it make it an absolute, undeniable miracle that any good film ever gets made at all?
It certainly demystifies the temple of cinema. It pulls back the curtain and reveals the very human, very flawed, incredibly stressed out architects trapped inside their glass fishbowls. And maybe realizing that the wizard is just a guy pulling levers makes the illusion even more impressive.
And that wraps our deep dive into the studio. If you enjoyed this behind-the-scenes look at Hollywood chaos, follow Roll Credits and share it with your fellow film fans. And don't forget to drop a comment with what movie or show we should cover next, old or new. We'll be back soon with more trivia, more movie magic, and maybe a few more industry secrets.